and mine as well. And I would just say that serenity is a big word, and there are so many different steps to get there, but this is one big step. And what we discussed last time was really being able to lean into that relationship that we have with God and being able to take on his support and his love and the love we feel from him and the love we feel to him. That relationship is a real strength we can hold on to during any times, specifically during challenging times, specifically during stressful and overwhelming times. And I think that it's always the first step. I mean, anything else we can do can be after that, but just doing whatever we're doing with God in the room in a very present way definitely not only enhances it, but really makes it possible. So during our last class, we explored just how to tap into that relationship and how to lean into the warmth and love and support and acceptance and everything else that we can feel when we're really in a good place, feeling that love in both directions. But we did mention that sometimes it doesn't work for us, or we don't relate to it, or there are different things going on. And I said that that would be the topic of this week's class. So I just want to tell you, I had an interesting situation that happened a couple of hours ago, and I thought it really ties right into our class. So I bought the apartment that I'm in from someone previously, and we have this ongoing communication where whenever I get mail that looks like it's going to be important, I text him and tell him there's mail to be picked up, and he actually lives an hour and a half away. And sometimes he stops by, he's in the neighborhood for different reasons, but it's usually a calculated visit. So I had let him know that there was important mail. I thought there was something, a credit card and some other things. And he was going to stop by. And a few hours ago, I got a text. The previous owner is standing by my door, and he's texting that I'm by the door. Now, the front door has a code, a combination lock that he usually uses to get into the front door. I've never had kept that number from him. I have my own number for my own house, but I guess there's a trust over there. So he texted me to say that the combination number isn't working. Or no, he didn't say it. He just said he can't get in. And I told him, okay, we actually had some workers and we needed to switch the combination code. So here's the new code, and voila, he's in. So I was thinking, here's a person standing in front of the door. He wants to get into the door. He can't get in. He needs to get, he knows there's something important there, and he's not just about to turn back and go back to Muncie without getting whatever he needs. And again, a new code, and he's able to get in. So for us, we need to have that same steadfastness and focus and persistence to know that there's that place that we want to get in. I want to get to that experience of experiencing God. I want to get to that experience of being able to really feel viscerally in my entire body that love and connection going in both directions. And sometimes I feel like I can't get in, but really all it means is I need to learn some new codes. There's something new some different number that I might need to press, but I need to get in. So when we're talking about why sometimes we don't experience the support and the relief and whatever we might be wanting to experience from our relationship with God, there might be many reasons, but I really narrowed it down to two. So the first is, and that's the focus, that's going to be part of the focus of this class, that if we're tuned in and we're really in a place of believing that God orchestrates the entire world and everything that happens is happening because of him, then sometimes it's hard to have a relationship with him when we're in pain because we know he's causing the pain. And unless we do some work to figure out where we stand now in our relationship, it's normal that during a time of pain and challenge, our relationship gets challenged. So that I would say is like a big thing that we want to discuss today, big idea, big focus. The other thing that I think is just a general thing that sometimes we experience is just the feeling of feeling irrelevant or disconnected. And just from being privy to the human experience, I think that we all feel this sometimes in some way, just not feeling as connected as we'd like to feel or feeling irrelevant. And I'm just going to touch on this point for a minute because I feel that for those of you that are interested or willing to do work on your own, I want to tell you about a class that I listened to this week, given by somebody. You can Google it and you'll find it. I checked if it comes up automatically, by somebody, Rabbi David Aaron, on the topic called The Secret Life of God. He's also written a book on this topic. And in his book and also in his talks, he uses Kabbalah and other Hasidic sources, but he takes us away from this misconception of God being over there, up there in the heavens, looking down at us and just being in that faraway place, and helps us understand God from the perspective of being right over here, right now. So again, that's a topic on its own, but I think for those of you that are interested in like reading books, it seems like he might have a good book. I did not read his book, I just listened to his class. But what we're going to address today is really the topic of pain. And pain is a universal topic. We all experience it, part of life. I think just being in life and being prepared for it is probably step number one. You know, when you're walking into something called life and you think this is going to be like a walk in the park, then you're unraveling at the slightest thing that's happening to you. But if you're walking into life more like this is a workout place, this is a gym room, this is this is a place where I'm gonna really work through stuff and become the best person I can, then obviously we're going to experience it from a different mindset. But even so, during painful times, there's a mix of complex emotions combined with the pain itself. And sometimes it's just a heaviness that's not allowing us to access our greatest strengths, our greatest knowledge, our greatest beliefs. And this whole mixture of things is really a recipe for sometimes a sense of disconnect from God. And particularly based on what I started off with, when we're acknowledging that He is the one that's bringing us the situation that's causing us the pain. This is not a new phenomenon. It's not about 2024. It's really been around for years. And again, the book that I'm basing our classes, Aish Kodesh, was written during the Holocaust. And there he brings out all these points. This is where he explores, what do you do with this feeling? What do you do with that feeling of disconnect? When you know really that your connection to God is going to be the answer, but you feel like you can't connect. But it didn't even start by the Holocaust. Even during the times when the Jews were in Egypt, the words that the Torah portion speaks about, where it says that there's sort of an understanding that the Jews would not be listening to Moses, they wouldn't be listening to Moshe, and it says mekoitze ruach, really translated loosely as from a place of limited spirit. Really understood as broken spirit, that or our spirit is limited, we can access that deep, real place inside ourselves the same way we can on a day when the sun is shining and the breeze is beautiful and everything is just hunky-dory. So we just need to be in that understanding and analysis of a situation that when we're in that place of pain and we're feeling a disconnect, we're normal, we're okay, and we're healthy. And it's just about how do I move out from this place. I lived next to one of my apartments that I lived in. I lived next to a group home that was a combination of a whole bunch of adults with various life challenges. My understanding from the little pieces that I picked up were that these were adults that had different levels of mental illness that had completely incapacitated them to the point where they needed to be in this group home. That means, people have mental illness and move past, but these were people that hadn't been able to move past whatever had happened to them. And it was interesting. Mostly, I didn't have much of a relationship with the people in the group home. They didn't really come and go at the same time that I came and went. But there was this one guy who would take walks frequently in front of the home, and he would pass my house too. And one day, as I was sitting on the porch with my children, he asked me, he says, "Excuse me." And again, we really know each other by first name. He said, "Excuse me," and I said, "Yes." And he just like shot that question, that big question: "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yes, I believe in God." So he asked, "How could you believe in God? There's so much pain in this world." And it was a question, a philosophical question that I had never been asked, I never thought about. But the response that I answered, I don't know, if I had ever thought about it, but it came out. And I just said that I don't know how I can believe in God. I just know that if I didn't believe in God, we would be experiencing much more pain. So it's true. It is true that there's a lot of pain in the world, and that pain sometimes challenges our belief in God. But when we have this knowledge, and especially if we have it in a way that's a real way, that due to the fact that I'm experiencing pain, I really need to connect to God, because without God, the pain is completely unbearable. Now, there's the part of belief. Obviously, I'm coming from a place of strong belief. And if that's a challenge, then again, there's separate work that needs to be done from that place of belief. But if one does find themselves as a believer, but just during times of pain, they feel like, okay, I believe, but still, how can I do this? We want to know that we want to approach this whole topic from the knowledge. And how do we have that knowledge that if I can hold on to God through my pain, I'm going to be experiencing my pain in a different way. And yet, on the other hand, understanding that there is a challenge that I'm feeling right now. And again, this challenge is not something that's only related to people that are struggling. And it's not only like, there are certain people and other people don't really feel this. Even somebody like the tzaddik known as Rabbi Elimelech from Lezhensk, he acknowledges this challenge in his shortened prayer that he composed. That prayer is called the prayer before the prayer. And the words he uses is, it is known to you. This is his own words. It is known to you. And this prayer is actually was originally written as sort of a replacement prayer for people that weren't able to say the whole prayer. And what he writes is, it is known to you that sometimes we experience pain to the point, the words he uses, she'ein anu yecholim. We are not able to connect and feel close to you. And just understand, like when I read these words, it just validates the experience, it validates the process. That even if I consider myself a person that's a connected person, that's a person that's spiritual, that's deep, sometimes I'm in a place that I just can't access that connection. And it's a real place, and we need to make space for that place with no judgment. No judgment on ourselves, no judgment on the experience. So any work that we're going to do in this area is going to come from the starting point of wanting the relationship and knowing somewhere inside of ourselves that if I can have that relationship, this experience is going to be something very different. And how do I know that? How would anyone know that? Well, we might know that from watching other people. And we've seen it, and many of us have read books on the Holocaust and similar kind of books of people that have experienced extreme challenge and suffering and pain and have been able to live their life with a lighter, freer living experience than had they not had God with them. And just, some of the books on the Holocaust are there for the taking, but there's one book that I read. It's actually not a Holocaust book. It's a book that's interesting name. It says, the name of the book is Why Bad Things Don't Happen to Good People. It says why bad things happen to good people, and there's a don't. It's written like sort of a post-it note on top of the book, like as if it's like added in afterwards. Because the question really people ask is, why do bad things happen to good people? And this person, this author, Rabbi Shaul Rosenblatt, writes why bad things don't happen to good people. And this book is actually about how he found light in his own darkness. He's a person that he has an entire life that he writes about, but particularly he writes about the illness that his wife experienced and how she passed on, and how he was able to, by holding on to God, really find light in that darkness. And we don't only need books. Many of us, and I would say probably all of us, as we think and feel deeply inside ourselves have that experience where we know this to be true. I can just say for myself, I have my own human experience that are like similar to anyone else. I think we all have that in common. And I particularly just remember a specific time period where I was separated then with I was a young mother of 6 children, very young children at that point. And whatever I experienced was really, I would say, a gift from God, but it was actually God. And during that time period, I remember like going through a couple of months of really having that connection and that like language and communication, like you'd say open communication. I was talking my life through and having those conversations with God. And I just remember experiencing that time period in my life as when I think back to that, I'm filled with joy. The memory is one of connection and lightness rather than pain, even though it could have been a very painful time in my life. I have to say that that time period and that openness and open-heartedness that I experienced is not something that I can experience easily. I really do believe it was a gift of God. But for me, it's sort of like just a taste. If I ever go back to that in my memory and I remember that time period, it reminds me that today, when I'm experiencing something in pain, that if I can access that connection with God, if I can really get there, I'm going to have something that's going to completely change the story that I'm living right now. So really the question that we'll be asking here is, okay, so I got it. I know a relationship with God is, and feeling his embrace and reaching out to him and feeling him reaching out to me, feeling his support for me, feeling him being there for me, and me even being there for him. I get that that's something so tremendous and it's going to help me in every area of my life. I also get that it could be helpful to me and it could be a life, make a life of a difference and a complete game changer when it comes to going through a challenge, when it comes to experiencing pain. But the question is how? What if right now I'm just experiencing something so painful and so heavy in my heart and in my mind, and it's there and it's making it hard for me to sleep, and it's surely making it hard for me to face God, because again, like I said, he's the one that brought the situation. And I'm just it's finding it hard to use my creativity to see that this is great and it's coming from a loving God. So I would say, and again, based on this book and based on the Aish Kodesh and whatever else, whatever other kind of learning it is, I think the basis is really talk it out. Talking, I mean, we know that talk therapy, I mean, we pay money for that, right? So what could be more valuable and actually more cost efficient than paying the therapist? Why don't you go directly to where your source is? And I'm not saying don't go to therapy. If you can afford that, I want to do that, that's also great. But if we could take the therapy directly to God and talk it out to him, and talking it out means being real, the same way you'd be real to anyone you want to be real with. You would be telling God, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm angry. I'm upset. It's hurtful. And whatever else is going on for you. I mean, I'm not going to give you the script because it's going to be my script. But the point is, whatever you're experiencing, if you could bring that directly to God in conversation, and even the fact that you're angry, and even the fact that you don't want to really talk to him, and even the fact that you're just doing this because this is the step on your list, but not something you feel natural about, all of that, the more we can do of that, try it. It's by telling God that we're struggling to hold on to the rescue tube he's throwing us, it might just make us willing and open to actually hold on to that rescue tube. It might just make us willing and able to hold on to whatever support we can and whatever he can be giving us. And again, the conversation that I'm telling you about, have it in your own words. But if you find your own words to be maybe not so natural now, maybe your own words are coming out stilted because of all these emotions, because of the heaviness, and maybe you're just not such a big talker, maybe you're just not in the mood of therapy, you can try something else. And this is something that I have personally found to be helpful. If it talks to you, I have found Psalms, Tehillim, to be a great way to talk to God. And the reason is because I'm always amazed at King David's experience, what his experience was, and the way, if you read those chapters, I'm always blown away. Like, he is being so honest with God. He's asking questions like, God, why have you forsaken me? He's saying, where are you? I am looking for you. He's saying all the things that I would want to be saying, and I would maybe even think maybe it's not even right to say it, but he's saying that for me. And I think if somebody wants to do this for themselves, they might want to take the Psalms, open it up, and find something that talks to them, and then just say it again and again and again. This is your thing, your path to sort of talking through your stuff. I remember also in a particular weekend retreat that I had gone away to, and at a time, again, of challenge, and somebody opened us up to a meditation using Psalm 23. And they read it to us in English. I actually had intended to open it up on the internet, but I didn't get a chance to do that. But I just remember, so the person that was reading it said, close your eyes and just listen to the words. And I just remember hearing it for the first time in a different way. Even though even though I go to the darkest of places, I am not scared because you are with me. And just saying those words and hearing those words in that way is, wow, so therapeutic. And even if you're not completely feeling like I'm not scared because you are with me, you might want to change it. I want to not be scared because you are with me. Or take those words and change it even further. When I go through the darkest of times, I want to feel like you are with me. I want to feel your presence. Take the lingo that King David uses and create something that becomes more of your own. And there are so many pieces there. I'll give you just one more example of something that I connected to. There's one of the passages, one of the chapters is about a time when King David ran away from his son Absalom. And this was just a horrific situation. I mean, we can think of challenging moments with our children, but this is like his son wanting to kill him. We're talking about real crisis, and this is a dramatic story in history it's unbelievable how King David dealt with it. And even reading his words of the way he experienced that whole thing, and the way the words of that chapter, and the way he writes or he says, and in his own words, the words are something about like I'm going to be going to sleep. And I remember hearing this like from somebody. He's talking about his situation, and then he's telling God, "Shachati v'yishana, I am going to sleep, and I'm counting on your support." And the person that I heard this translation from was saying something to the effect of like, when he said he was going to sleep, it didn't mean that he was just taking a nap. It meant he was like, whatever it meant for King David, whether it meant putting on pajamas and completely getting into a place of like, I can go to sleep because you are helping me, you are supporting me, you are being there for me. So that's just another chapter that talks to me personally. But again, I invite you, just find the words that talk to you. And if none of them talk to you, create your own. And once we have actually done some of this work and made an attempt by talking, by expressing our anger, by expressing any kind of sentiments that we're feeling, and then by being open to experiencing a relationship again, we want to try to do the things to proactively keep that relationship going in the challenging times. That means, okay, you had that therapeutic moment where you spoke to God, you feel a little bit of lightness. Maybe lightness is too light of a word. Maybe you just feel a little bit of relief, tiny bit of relief. Then you want to take that and keep going at that. You want to keep finding ways to reconnect, talk to God, to talk to Him about your pain, and also, on the other hand, to proactively, in your pain, look for God's involvement in a way that does make you feel a little bit relief. Because if we want to be honest, every single situation we're in, there is God, obviously in a big way because he's making the situation, but there's the little ways, and there are kindnesses that God sends us in the details of the pain. So we can proactively get ready to just find him in the way, in the kindnesses that he sends our way. There's a very common story where in the Torah of the story where Joseph was sold. And the story goes that as the brothers were in the midst of their meal, and this is like I'm telling you, you know, how it actually gets written in the Torah, they saw that there was a whole caravan of Arabs, I believe it was, and they were coming in the direction of where they were sitting. And it says over there that the camels of these Arabs were carrying spices and different kind of things, and they were going on the way down to Egypt. And at that point, they decided to make the sale of Joseph to the I think it was the Arabs. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it's just interesting the way the whole story is told. Why does it tell you what it said, what they were carrying, and what they were taking along with them? And the sages bring out this point that generally they typically carry kerosene and tar and things that have bad smells. And there was divine providence that orchestrated that this caravan would actually be carrying fragrant spices in order to not subject Joseph to any more unnecessary suffering than whatever he was supposed to be going through. So this concept of the pleasant smelling spices is a concept in all of our situations. We always want to take that sniff like, where are the pleasant smelling spices in this situation? Where is the good stuff? And the good stuff doesn't mean that it's going to be in a way that's visible to the eye. It can be something we feel in our heart. And I just remember having a conversation with somebody about, you know, a challenging situation. I won't go into any details, but the piece that I'm going to tell you is that sometimes the gifts and the spices are in ourselves. It's the personality that God gave us, maybe. It's the support that we can give ourselves. It's maybe God sent you through the situation with a challenging relationship, but He gave you perspective. Maybe God gave you just a way of handling things. Maybe God gave you some tools. Maybe you just know how to enjoy life in other ways. But all those other spices are ways for us to connect to God in His kindness that's visible. Because even though we know from a place of faith that everything that we're experiencing, even the pain, is Him being active in our life, not absent, but active in our life to create the possibilities for ourselves. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that really is. But even if we have that, besides for that, we also know that there are the small little ways that He's there for us in ways to make it easier, in ways to take away the pain, in ways to take away the pain so that we don't suffer one moment of unnecessary pain. And in general, it's not that He's like, a remote God sitting in a different country, sending out computer messages of what should be changed in our life and what should be created in our life so that we can experience more relief or some of His kindness. He's actually here with us right now. And even in this story, the more I can relate to Him as if He's in the room. He's not somewhere else. He's in the room. And I once had once that I had a child in the hospital, and I was in the hospital over a Shabbat. And during that time, there were 2 weeks in a row that I was in the hospital. And during the first week, I was there myself. And during the second week, somebody else was with me. And the difference of my experience in that hospital the second week with somebody else with me was it was a completely different experience than the week before. And the reason was I just had somebody with me, right? Now, if that can be an experience that I have with a person who's not able to do much just to be there, how much more so could my experience of pain be changed with an understanding of the reality that God is with me in this room right now, right over here, totally involved, totally not from the outside, and He is orchestrating every tiny little detail in a way that I have the right kind of growth, but not too much growth. And sometimes I think about it, in the school that I work in, we have a huge gym room. We call it a therapy room. It's like where OTs and PTs work. And the goals of OTs and PTs, obviously, is to help all the children in this room develop the strength that they need for life. Now, that's just saying it in general terms. Of what we're talking about is these are children, their core and their endurance is poor, and their ability to do what other people can do in terms of walking, running, climbing, just doing life is quite limited or limited to a certain extent depending on the child. So whatever kind of exercise they're going to be doing, they're going to be doing to help this child get their place where they can be functioning and where they can be enjoying and doing life like anyone else. Those therapists in that gym will decide on the exercise that's the perfect, we call it the zone of proximal development. Based on where the child is right now, is a lot of thought. Okay, where's the child right now? What is she able to do? How much growth is going to be possible in this moment that won't be too painful? So it's not like, let's say, just for layman's terms, the easiest for you to understand would be we have a treadmill in that room. That's probably the least used equipment and the least used exercise. But just for you to understand, so there's a certain level of incline and there's a certain kind of speed that they can be going on, right? The OT or the PT who's sitting there or standing there with the student is going to be making a decision about how much of an incline and how much of a speed and how long can this child do the treadmill to gain enough strength that it should be worth the workout, but not to stress the child out too much, that it's just too much, right? So if we think of ourselves in our situation, we have God standing there with us in the room and making an exact decision in that moment about how much pain is the right kind of pain that's going to bring out our most beautiful potential because of whatever comes out from that pain is only to bring out our potential. How much pain is the right amount of pain for this situation, and how much is too much? Okay, you know what? This is going to be too much. So I'm going to change this, and I'm going to bring this change in. I'm going to bring in this person. I'm going to bring in this support system. I'm going to bring in this kind of, positive feedback, whatever it is. That's God being there on premises with us. And that understanding should really be giving us some level of openness to the relationship. We want to find comfort. We want to find his comfort when things are painful. And we want to see his involvement in our life as something that sort of keeps us connected. I mean, the more of his involvement we see, the more connected we're going to feel. So again, let's just to review and to recap what we did until now. The process begins with knowing that I want this. I want this relationship. It's going to be good for me. It's going to be helpful to me. Aside from the fact that I want it for other reasons, I want to be there for God as well. But in this moment of pain, I know I want this. The step to get there would be to talk to God, to really talk it all out, the anger, the emotions, even your resistance to him, even the challenge that you're having in the moment. You want to bring that to God and then take it to the next level to keep the relationship going. We want to be noticing God, not only in the challenge, but in the good small ways that he brings his kindness, that he gives us that fragrant spice to smell, so that the situation we're in is just the right level of challenge. I want to share with you a very nice story that I heard. Many of you are familiar with the person, Elie Wiesel. He was a person that's a known Holocaust survivor. I believe he opened up a museum, but again, I didn't do my fact checking perfectly, but I think that was the case. Anyway, he wrote a book about his life, and part of what he wrote, big portion of what he wrote, was about his visit to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's actually written up in a book, Positivity Bias, which is a book that I own. It's on page 150. For those of you that have it, I want to look at it. I needed to really reread it again, and I didn't get a chance to. But I also heard this story from someone else. I'm going to give you a joint version of the story, like what I heard from two different people. So he was there at the Rebbe, at the Lubavitcher Rebbe's, at his, in his room, at his place, and he was just having conversation and discussing what he had experienced during the Holocaust. And he was there for many, many hours. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe asked him, "It seems like you came for something. What did you come for?" And he says, "No, I didn't come for anything." And he, challenged him with the basic question of how can you believe in God because of the Holocaust? And there was more conversation. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe asked him again, "It seems like you came for something. What did you come for?" And he answered no. But then later he said, "I think I did come for something." And he asked the Rebbe, based on what I told you about the Holocaust and whatever I've been through. And he explained how he watched one of his, I think it was his parents being killed and different things going on. He turns to the Rebbe and says, "Can you help me learn to cry?" And he said he had never cried since the tragedy that he had seen that was so vast that it just took away his ability to cry. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe heard this and he stayed quiet for a few moments and he shook his head and he says, "And I can teach you more than that. I can teach you to cry, but I can also teach you to sing." And the reality is that we don't want to be coming to God with our anger to remain in our anger. We want to be coming to God with our anger so that we can learn to sing. But we first will need to learn to cry first, to feel those heavy feelings, to be able to feel the full gamut of whatever we're experiencing, and to be open to whatever we're experiencing. In order to be able to get to those positive places in our, vision of a cozy, delicious relationship with God. And for some people, it's a process. I would say for many people, it's a process. And I would say for some people, it's even a process that might necessitate outside help, support, counseling. But we want to know that when we learn to cry, we will learn to sing. And even more powerfully, I would say, is that when we can invite God into our crying, we'll be able to reach out to him in song. And the Rebbe understood that for Elie Wiesel to truly heal, They needed to cry and then to sing. So I want to just leave that with you for a minute and ask you to think about the effort it would take for you in those moments to be able to come to God in crying and then to be able to move on to a place of song. And to think about what kind of relationship could develop. How that could be just something really, really special and something to hold on to. You know, there are different kinds of relationships that we experience in our life. There's one type of relationship that I would say, I would say in advance, I would call that the more superficial relationship, but not always necessarily. It's the relationship that happens. It happens when you meet someone on a bus and you're talking, and you might even open up to the person and have a great conversation. It happens maybe a workmate, someone that you meet every day, and you can also be having a great relationship. The person at the gym, your neighbor. But what happens with those relationships that happen to us, they just sort of happen, they come into our lives. When the circumstances change, the relationship does also. However, a relationship that's built, that's developed through loyalty, dedication, commitment, concern, those relationships do not change based on the circumstance because they have depth and they last beyond the circumstance. So if you want to think about our relationship with God, yeah, like it's nice, maybe like one day, we learn a nice song and we say God is here and that's one type of relationship. But if we can take our challenges and those challenging moments when we actually feel angry at God or disconnected, or we have other messy feelings coming up for us, and if we can work through those feelings and really connect in a way that takes effort and that takes maybe emotional strength, then we will be gifted with a relationship that's deep and that's never ending and lasting, and that's most importantly empowering, so that during those times when we're having challenges, we can really have what to lean back on. And sometimes I think about this, and I think about this because I watch people do life. And I've seen sometimes that when people experience life crises, and it could be, relationship crises or something that happened to them, or things that people can't be judged in any way during challenging moments. But sometimes people, when they're experiencing these life crises and their relationship with God becomes challenged, sometimes to the point where if you just mention God, it triggers a whole host of emotions. What very often happens is because it's challenging and they're not looking for another challenge, people just step aside. They say, okay, I guess it's not working for me. I have a hard life, I have a challenging life, and I guess I'm not doing God. And sometimes I wish, just from knowing people like from close that can be experiencing this, I wish I could send them a memo and let them know that this disconnect is creating so much more challenge than necessary. That whatever they're experiencing and that's weighing down on their heart is going to be felt in so much more of a heavy way, and their challenge will more than be doubled, and it's so unnecessary. And I wish I could tell them that if they put any kind of effort, even a tiny little piece of effort into figuring out how to reconnect, perhaps on their terms, perhaps in a very, very minor way, perhaps even from that place of anger and staying in that place of anger for a long time, but any small amount is going to be helpful to get them to a better place. And that small amount is like, I think about one of my children that had a stomach virus. And during the time when he wasn't feeling well, he was vomiting and he was really feeling just horrible. He was not eating at all. And a day passed and he wasn't eating anything. And I tried, at least some hydration. He did me the favor, but he wasn't doing well. The next day he woke up and I saw like a sliver of a change. I saw that he was feeling, it seemed like he was feeling a little bit better, but still not feeling so perfectly well. And I knew that if he wasn't going to eat, he would surely not be feeling better. So I asked him, like, do you want to eat something? And he said, no, I'm really not feeling well. I'm feeling so nauseous. So I said, you know what? Can you try one pretzel? Just try one pretzel. Eat that pretzel. Let's see how you feel. And he ate the pretzel. And guess what? It settled his stomach somewhat that he was actually willing to take the pack of pretzels for me. And he ate another pretzel. Maybe not, at the speed that he normally would, but he took another pretzel and then another pretzel. And then within a few hours, he was able to eat more. And I always use this as like an analogy for how we sometimes need to approach these challenging moments. That maybe if we're feeling like I can't feel connected to God. I'm feeling so lost. I'm feeling so down. I'm actually feeling depressed. And you're asking me to connect to God. That's just not on my radar. What I want to say in that moment is just take a pretzel. Do one tiny little act, a tiny little act of connection, and no more. Don't expect more of yourself. And when you feel ready, take another pretzel and then another pretzel. And you're going to see that you're going to slowly get to a healthier, better place. Because we know the words that it says, again, this is some Psalms, joy and strength come from being in a place next to God. So if we're looking for that joy and strength, we're not going to find it in any other place. The only way to find that is by being with God. And when we're with God, we can have that joy and that strength. And these perspectives and this vision and this path that living a life of connection and relationship with God gives us is simply limitless. So if you ever, or if perhaps now you find yourself in some way near that locked door, in front of that locked door, where a life of connection with God seems elusive or far away or hard to get to, I ask you simply, please do not walk away from the door. Think of trying some new codes, some of the things we discussed here, so you can enter and have the gift that's available for you. And thank you for having me here tonight. And I think that, Hani, I want to thank you personally. I, once again, gained just talking about something that I love.
Thank you so much, Goldie. And your talk really hit the spot. I think you're just talking to me, and I'm sure other people felt that you were talking just to them. And even your examples really, like, they hit home. They were really good, and the visualization of that really was like it did hit the spot.
Thank
Can't
you.
say I'm relaxed. No. Is there anybody who would like to say anything or is any to share?